Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for this channel, and that is a tech video log. We'll start this right now. This is not a tutorial on how to restore a 2008 MacBook, but maybe you'll learn something along the way, mostly just from my mistakes probably, but anyhow, what we're going to be doing is making sure that this thing is at least somewhat functional. We're going to put an SSD into it, and we're going to try to put macOS on it, and we're going to see if this thing works. Now, a little bit about this computer. I got this for free from a coworker, and said coworker removed the hard drive from it, and he left me the parts inside where the hard drive goes to install a new SSD. I think at this point, SSDs have gotten so cheap that there's no real point in purchasing a 2.5-inch hard drive to jam into here. This 240 gig Lexar SSD cost me $14.99, so kind of crazy how cheap these have gotten. I think the last time I bought a 250-ish gig drive, it cost me about $100, and that was back in 2015 or so. But anyway, this was the cheapest SSD that I could find, or cheapest 240-ish gigabyte SSD that I could find that had a name brand that I recognized. Granted, I've never seen a Lexar SSD before, but yeah, I've heard of Lexar and memory cards before anyhow. Just a little bit of a tour around the outside. It wouldn't be in terrible shape if it weren't for this corner. So it looks like it got dropped onto concrete at one point. You can see it's pretty well smashed in there. And the other side has some scratching as well. Looks like it maybe got dropped out of a car or something onto a parking lot. Other than that, the back of the machine doesn't look terrible. There's a few scratches along the entire sort of side here, and then there's a sticker from presumably where this computer was bought from. It has all four of the rubber feet on it still, which isn't bad for a 15-year-old computer. And from my understanding, this is a bit of a weird model that was only produced for 1 year. So this is a 2008 MacBook. I don't remember if I said that or not. Notice it's not a MacBook Pro, it is just a MacBook. And in 2009, they switched to the white polycarbonate MacBooks, and then this aluminum chassis became the MacBook Pro. And in fact, they're both model number A1278, I believe, for that generation MacBook Pro and this machine. So we're going to start out here just by seeing if this machine has any kind of life in it whatsoever. So I bought a MagSafe 1 replica power adapter, let's call it, from Amazon. This thing was quite cheap. It was like $17, so we'll see if it works or not. Sort of looks like the Apple power adapter. Doesn't weigh a whole lot, but these power adapters don't necessarily need to either. What I'm looking for here is there should be some kind of an error screen that pops up, basically just telling us that we don't have a hard drive in the machine or in the system. This is kind of a side note probably, but this power adapter tip is incredibly scratched up and messed up looking considering it just came out of the box. So let's hope that this thing works. This machine, being from 2008, is a MagSafe 1 machine, which is a little bit unfortunate because most of the power adapters that you'll find when you search Amazon or wherever are going to be MagSafe 2, but MagSafe 1 adapters are also relatively readily available. Alright, I've got it plugged into the wall now, and it hasn't exploded yet, so let's see what happens if we line this guy up. You get a green light and then an orange light, which is what it's supposed to do, from what I remember from these machines. Go ahead and readjust the camera a bit, and we'll point it at the screen and press the power button and see what happens. Hi there. You can sort of see me in that really dirty screen. I'll clean that off here in a second if it does work. Just one more note on these power adapters. It seems like MagSafe 1 power adapters, at least the knockoff ones, all come with this L-shape connector. Originally, you could get an L-shape or a T-shape, but it seems like now the MagSafe 1's knockoff adapters are this L-shape, and the MagSafe 2 ones are T-shape. Of course, it is a bit unfortunate. I have to buy a special power adapter just for this thing, but It's an Apple product, so of course it has to have a proprietary power connector. At least they're starting to get better with that now. But let's see if this shows any signs of life whatsoever when pressing the power button. Interestingly, the light on the power adapter thing has gone green, which would indicate that it's fully charged already. Not sure I believe that. Not seeing any signs of life out of this thing. The light up here in the front's not doing anything either. Does the little battery level indicator work? No, it does. The battery level indicator would suggest that it's charging, which is odd because, like I said, this light's green on here. Let's see what happens if I plug in the MagSafe connector the other way. Still turning green. Okay, there it just turned red. Maybe I just had a bad connection. Let's see. Press the power button. Ooh, there we go. There's something. Must not have been making a very good connection with the MagSafe connector there, I suppose. And it's probably not going to do anything here. At least I wouldn't expect it to. Should show an error eventually, in theory. It kind of acts like the battery's actually taking a charge, which I think is a good sign. Yep, there it is. We got the little file system with the question mark. So that's what I was expecting it to do. So let's go ahead and chuck the SSD in here and see what we get. Let's flip this guy over and see what we've got. So this being an older machine, you can actually just open this little access door and get access straight to our hard drive, which is really nice. I think this thing's kind of funny because it's almost like Tesla ripped this off for their door handles, where you have to kind of push this side down and then pull up on the other side. But anyway, that's a complete side note. Over here is our SSD mounting hardware. And I've just realized that I really don't know how to install the SSD in this thing. Probably shouldn't call it SSD mounting hardware either. It's really meant to mount a hard drive. Because this was kind of made before SSDs hit mainstream, at least. They might have existed in 2008, but they would have been very expensive back then. Apparently there's a magnet right there. That's interesting. Apparently these little things are magnetic. Fun fact. So if you want to just hold your parts somewhere, they can go kind of like that. I think what we have to do is pull this bracket out with a much smaller screwdriver than what I grabbed. Alright, this is like a 00 jeweler's screwdriver. Phillips. And that just comes out like so. And I think what you actually do on these is you just put these 4 screws into the SSD, and then the SSD just kind of rocks, gets inserted in here, and then this clamps it on. We'll see if that actually works or not. So we'll unbox our little Lexar SSD, I guess. Or completely rip the packaging open. That works too, I suppose. Man, what's holding this? Oh, I guess there's tape on the sides. That would do it. Whatever. We're already in here now. Not much to it. There's paper in there, which is probably for a warranty, and there's a drive, which I guess is exactly what's promised. And this is a SATA 6 gigabit per second drive. I'm pretty sure the SATA interface on a computer this old is going to be SATA 2, but that really doesn't matter for our purposes because it's the random read and write speeds that are going to be that you're going to benefit from with an SSD, and that's really what makes a computer feel snappy. So even though we won't be getting the absolute maximum performance we possibly could with this drive, it's still going to be a lot better than an old school spinning platter. People are probably yelling at me in this last clip, but these are not the same Phillips screw that is. These are a Torx T6, it would appear. Okay, so with all 4 of those screws installed on the hard drive, we'll go ahead and plug it in. So I'm going to guess it goes this way. Yep, looks like it does. Should just plug straight into that cable. And then we can put this in like so. So this will just go right back down here like so. And we'll screw that back down. Alright, new Lexar SSD installed. Of course, if you needed to replace the battery, you could do so right here as well. I don't have a battery for this machine. Kind of doubt the battery's actually good, but real easy to change. You just pull on this little tab here. The contacts are over on the side. Yeah, not really a whole lot to it. But let's go ahead and slap this back on. And that little latch closes automatically. Unfortunately, this panel doesn't fit too well. You can see how that wiggles, and that's because this corner is completely dented in. So I believe whatever feature's supposed to be constraining this corner from wiggling is kind of dented out of existence. Okay, I've got the screen cleaned up just a little bit. Cleaned up reasonably well, except for one little scratch right here. That's a little bit of a shame, but is what it is. It's still not perfect. I've turned off my lights to try to get this so that's a little bit less glary and smeary on the screen. But let's go ahead and bring our power adapter back in. I should also note that I wouldn't usually recommend buying super cheap power adapters for your expensive electronics, but this of course is a 15-year-old computer, and I'm pretty sure you can't get the OEM power adapter for this thing anymore, so we're kind of stuck using the cheap knockoff ones. Maybe there is a good brand for power adapters of this vintage, but I am not sure. And I mentioned earlier how most of these are L-shape, unfortunately. And the reason why I don't like these L-shape ones is that if you want to run power sort of off the edge of a table like I'm doing here, it blocks the ports, so you have to put it in the other way. I'm going to insert this flash drive into one of the USB ports over here. And that flash drive has what I believe to be the installer for macOS 10.6, which is Snow Leopard. So we'll talk more about the reason why I'm using Snow Leopard in a second here, but first let's just see if this works. I downloaded this ISO from the Internet Archive, so there's absolutely no guarantee that this works at all. And we're doing the thing again where the power adapter light's green, which I think means that it's not connected very well. Okay, this power adapter's kind of horrible. Look how much I can twist this thing. I don't know that the original power adapters have that much slop in it. I think that's why we're having connection problems. But let's try this again. I believe in order to get into the boot menu on a Mac, you hold down Command and then you press the power button. The light's on the front. We get a little blip from the DVD drive and the screen comes on. I see the light on the flash drive blinking. I think that's a good sign. I don't know how long I have to keep holding Command down for. I don't know if this is going to work either. To be completely honest, I downloaded this ISO image from the Internet Archive and then flashed it with Etcher, which in theory should work fine. The problem is there's an Apple logo. I think that's a good sign. The only thing is when I used Etcher, it did throw an error about missing partition tables or something like that. I'm going to let go of the Command key now because it looks like it's doing something. We have a spinning wheel and an Apple logo, and I believe those are good signs. I'm going to be honest, I'm gaining a lot of respect for people who manage to film screens of things and make it look good, because this really is not looking so great on the camera. It looks fine in person, but of course this uses a mini display port, so I don't have the adapters to hook this up to a capture card or anything, and I'm not sure a capture card or I'm not sure that it's even outputting video during this stage of the boot up process. Now, the reason why I chose 10.6, and really the reason why I wanted to get this laptop running in the first place, is because throughout, well, not throughout the entirety, but through part of my elementary school years and my middle school years, we had Macs from the 2009 vintage iMacs and those white polycarb MacBooks. And they ran, I believe, 10.6 the entire time that I was there. I don't think they ever upgraded them from the time that they got them. And I'm not sure if that was because they needed 10.6 in order to run PowerPC apps, or if they just couldn't be bothered to update them all. But anyway, I specifically remember that background, and that is why I wanted to get 10.6 on this. Basically, entirely just nostalgia reasons. Our touchpad is working, that's good. Use English for the main language, that is what we would like to do. So, to set up installation of Snow Leopard, click Continue to repair. Using disk utility, restore your computer from a time machine backup or perform other tasks, choose an option. We don't want to do any of that, we do want to just click on Continue. We'll agree with that. Select the disk where you want to install macOS. Well, there's no disk there, and that's kind of an issue. Choose an option in the Utilities menu. That's up here. What can we do here? Startup disk. Install DVD. That's what we're using. And apparently we can search for a network disk on startup. Yeah, but we don't really want to do that. Can I get out of this? I can quit this utility, yes. We can open disk utility. Let's see if anything actually pops up in here. Oh yeah, it does pop up. Look at that, 240.06 gigabyte Lexar SSD. Shows up exactly as it should. I should also be completely honest with you. I've never actually installed macOS before on anything. This is a new experience for me too. I did say that this is not a tutorial. I believe, well, I'm guessing that we have to format this thing, which is the Erase tab. Now, I do use macOS on my daily driver, so I kind of know how these utilities work, but obviously this is a much older version than what I'm used to. So we're going to name this very creatively. We're going to call it SSD. Doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and click on Erase and see what happens. Erasing a disk deletes all disk on a participant. The disk is unformatted. Yep, well, there's no data on it, so let's go ahead and erase it. Waiting for disk to reappear. Partitioning, calculating. That kind of looks like it. So, can I quit disk utility? And then maybe, aha, SSD. At least 239 gigs free, that's what we want to do. Install. About 30 minutes remaining, it claims. Now, in terms of I/O, this thing has 2 USB ports on the side of it, and those USB ports are both USB 2.0 ports, which means that this might take a little while because we are reading it off of a USB 2 flash drive effectively. It is actually a USB 3 flash drive, but of course, we can't use USB 3 if we don't have USB 3, so it's going to be USB 2 speeds. Yes, since I was on the subject of I/O, I can tell you what else is on this guy. There is a gigabit Ethernet port over here as well. Definitely don't find that on a new Mac. And then there's that mini display port that I mentioned earlier, a headphone jack, a microphone jack. Those are 2 completely separate jacks on this computer. And then there's the Kensington lock port. And over on the other side of the machine, over here, there's this slot where CDs and DVDs would go into. Those don't really get used anymore, but it is on here. Okay, well that was faster than the 30 minutes that it said it was going to be. Looks like we're restarting now. Of course, maybe there's an extra amount of time that's going to take once it restarts here. Looks like it is still at least thinking about trying to read the flash drive there. I see the activity light doing things on it, but we'll see where we end up. doesn't really seem like our battery is actually charging. The little indicator on the side over here is not gone up at all. Alright, we got past a little intro video there. Unfortunately, that was kind of hard to see due to the lighting in the room, so you could probably just see my reflection in that video. But anyway, let's go ahead and see if this thing will actually connect to a wireless network. I'm not sure that it will. Let's see what happens if we try to connect this thing to a wireless network. Let's see if this thing will go online, I guess. Might not work. Might not sure. Oh, it seems like it actually is going to work. Interesting. Enter my Apple ID. Can I skip this, I wonder? I wonder if it would work. It seems like I can. What if I just don't do anything here? Yeah, we can just say continue. Create my account. Yeah, that'll be fine. Ah, we can take a picture. Sure. Why not? We're going to have a nice picture of a camera. Or I think we can probably just skip it. Oh, I must select a picture. Okay, fine. There we go. Great profile picture. Let's use that. All right, Chicago, Illinois. Works for me. We can do all of these things. Let's go. And there's that Aurora background. The install macOS X install DVD still shows up. That's kind of funny. It's because the flash drive's still plugged in, so I guess that makes sense. Be able to eject that. So I guess first things first, let's see what we're dealing with here. I'm assuming it's just going to be, whoops. I'm assuming this is just going to be sort of a base level Mac. Yep, we have a 2 gigahertz Intel Core 2 Duo and 2 gigabytes of DDR3. I might actually be able to upgrade this memory a little bit. I have some laptop DDR3 laying around. Might work, might not work. I'm not sure. What happens if we click on more info? I'm curious if there's any information on the battery in here. Charge remaining 18 milliamp hours. That's not very promising. Full charge capacity is 4,300 milliamp hours. 505 cycles. That's not very many, at least. And apparently it's taking in 418 milliamps right now, which is not very much. So it does say that it's charging, though. It may be trying to limp this battery into some kind of a recovery stage. I bet you the voltage is super low. Actually, the voltage is right there. Yeah, 10.66. I think it's a 10.8 volt battery, so it's not actually that low. I'm not sure why the amperage is so low. It doesn't seem too bad. Does it tell you anything about battery health? To be completely honest, I didn't realize that the cycle count and all that stuff went back this far in macOS history, or I guess computer history. Apparently this has always been a thing, or at least since 2008. 15-year-old computer still has the same stuff the modern one does. I think you can show a battery percentage. Yeah, there we go, 1%. says 9 hours and 49 minutes until full, and the power source is a power adapter, so I guess that's good. Claims that it's charging. Not sure why it's charging so slowly, but it is what it is. And our power adapter is slightly warm, but not too bad. Old version of Safari. Going to apple.com, but just right out of the gate, let's see if we can load a relatively new website. Kinda doesn't look like it. It's loading bits and pieces of it, I suppose. Maybe not great. Yeah, we have software update popping up. Oh boy, yeah, speedtest.net, not so happy. Not too happy to load in this browser. Maybe a different one. Curious about our Wi-Fi speeds is all. Of course, a MacBook from this era is going to have the sounds with the speakers. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just get this thing as up to date as it wants to be, and play around with it a bit. Next scene, I'll probably tear it apart, clean the dust out of the inside, and we'll kind of go from there. Maybe try to upgrade the RAM and see what I can do anyway. So I'm going to play around with it a bit, and I'll come back. Okay, so this is probably the easiest to get apart laptop that I've ever worked on. It's just a few screws around the outside. They're pretty obvious which ones you want to take out. I did take the battery out first, just in case. I took it outside for a couple of seconds, blew the dust out real quick. Didn't want to spend too much time out there because it is actively raining right now, so I kind of found a dry spot. Just blew it out real quick. Definitely don't want to get water in here. Really didn't look that bad, to be honest. Just a few little dust bunnies in it. It's not perfectly clean now by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot better than it was. I did think about redoing thermal compound on this too, but I would have to take the entire motherboard out to do that, and I just don't think that's really worth doing, to be completely honest. Especially because right now all I have is Arctic Silver 5, and Arctic Silver 5 really doesn't work super well for sort of direct die applications. Works fine if you're putting it onto a heat spreader on a normal computer, but when you're doing something where the CPU or GPU die directly contacts the heat sink, it doesn't work quite as well. It seems to dry out really quickly when you do that. I've done it a couple times and it just doesn't last very long, so if I had better thermal compound for it, I would do it, but it doesn't seem like it's struggling too hard in terms of thermals, to be honest with you. It's not like it's running the fan super hard all the time to try to keep itself cool. It seems to be doing just fine. Could have probably blew that fan out a little bit better, but that's okay. The other thing that I want to do while I'm in here is swap out the RAM, because I do have a little bit of RAM here from the old spare RAM box. One stick, and here's 2 sticks. So this is not going to be a huge upgrade if it works. I'm not sure how picky this era of Mac is about its RAM. No idea if it'll even recognize it or not. I believe these are DDR3 sticks, and I believe what's in here are also DDR3 sticks. So in theory, it should work. Though in practice, who knows. So this should be pretty simple. Pop tabs out of there. So what we had in here would have been two 1 gigabyte sticks. If I can get the bottom one out, you have to pull these out of the way too. Yeah, there we go. Actually, I bet this will work. These have almost the same markings on them. In fact, they have basically the exact same markings on them. The part numbers are almost exactly the same. They're both Samsung memory sticks. That's kind of crazy. I guess this RAM is actually from about the same era. This kit came out of a Toshiba laptop from, I think, around 2009, so stands to reason that it's the same RAM, I suppose. And you can see the difference between these. This one has double the chips on it compared to this one. And these both came out of the same laptop, and came from the factory with 3 gigs of RAM, so in theory, it should work in this laptop as well. It just gives it a little bit more RAM. Not a huge upgrade, but something. That's not right. Alright, so that's, I believe, seated in there properly. I guess we'll go ahead and close her back up and see what we get. We'll say the only thing that is a little bit difficult about opening this guy up is that these screws are not consistent lengths. There's only a couple of different types, but they kind of go into seemingly random spots. Also, it uses a 00 Phillips, like jeweler's screwdriver for all the screw heads, and they're really tiny Phillips screws, so you got to be real careful not to strip them out, but it's not too difficult. Try to fire this guy up and see what we get. I did determine that the battery at least holds somewhat of a charge. Alright, we've got an Apple logo, which I don't think we would have gotten that far if it didn't recognize the RAM entirely, so I think that's a good sign. And yes, the battery in this thing does actually hold at least a little bit of a charge. So, we're not plugged in right now. We've got 90%. Claims 3 hours and 22 minutes remaining, which would be pretty good, if true. Let's go ahead and take a look at the About section. And we now have 3 gigabytes of 1067 megahertz DDR3. So there we go. We added a whole extra gigabyte, which is pretty good for RAM that I had laying around. So anyway, now that the inside's cleaned up and the memory's been upgraded, I think it's time to clean up the outside of this computer. I'd like to apologize for the audio in the last section. I realized I turned my microphone on, but I proceeded to not actually plug it in. So anyway, it should be a little bit better now. With any luck, I was close enough to the camera where it still sounded okay anyway. But I would like to go ahead and just take a quick look here at the applications folder and just see what sort of things are in here. I guess another thing I should do is test the DVD drive and see if that actually works. There's really not that many installed or pre-installed apps. One I do remember is the good old photo booth. This is something I used to mess around with as kids in school. And I remember there's like a few different effects in here, one of them being the thermal camera one. I remember this was popular. Really not a huge amount of effects in here, but it's kind of cool. And to be honest with you, the quality of the webcam in this thing isn't actually that bad, which is probably just saying that webcams haven't really gotten all that much better in the last 15 years. But I mean, the most modern MacBooks with the Apple Silicon chips, the webcams are definitely an improvement over this. But really, other than that, I don't think there's that much that really has too much of a better picture quality than this. I'm not saying that it's good, but I'm just saying they haven't really gotten any better. It's not a huge amount of pre-installed software, really. Kind of makes sense because I think it only uses like 9 gigs of storage or something like that. So there is a piece of software that I would like to get for this thing. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get it or not. Sure, continue, why not? It's the worst that can happen. And that piece of software is KidPix. And I believe I've tracked it down to KidPix 3D as the piece of software that we used to use back in my school days. We'll see if we can't get a 15-day free trial. I have no idea. This is a website that still exists. So we'll see if we can't get something here. Well, that's annoying. Can't save your registration data. Try to give them my soul, and they won't take it. Interesting. Seems to exist on the Mac App Store. $40 for this, eh? And of course, throughout all of this, you gotta notice all the aqua-themed scroll bars and things. Oh, looks quite good, really. And honestly, when I was using this system yesterday, I noticed how many similarities there are between this and even my current Macs, like stuff like Spotlight search. I just kind of by habit did Command space and Spotlight pops up. And rather impressively, this search from a 2009 operating system works better than the current search in Windows 11 and 10. So shows you that maybe progress isn't being made in some aspects. One issue with this version of Safari is that it really doesn't open a whole heck of a lot of websites anymore. So I think we might have to try to get maybe a updated browser. I'm kind of guessing that we're going to have a bit of a hard time doing that, though. Yeah, so even like Google Chrome will no longer receive updates because this is no longer a supported operating system. But we'll try it. Maybe it'll be a little bit newer. And also another thing that's similar, the stacks are the same still as they are in the modern version of macOS. So a lot of similarities between this and macOS 13 is what we're on now. I shouldn't say that they're the same, but they're very similar. And the install process is just drag it into the folder. Gotta love that. I will say this machine is incredibly snappy. Running an SSD in it, it boots up incredibly quickly, and I have no issues so far with the performance. Granted, haven't really done that much with it yet, but haven't had any problems. My main gripes with it are just the fact that most websites don't really open. But anyway, we should be able to open. Oops, it's right there. Yeah, and this is the same message that you get nowadays. Google Chrome is an application downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? macOS still has that same notification in it when you install software from somewhere. And of course, there's the bounce. Yes, the bounce and the dock. I don't know that that still exists in macOS. It probably does. I'm not going to set Chrome as my default back browser, but we're going to see what happens. Oh yeah, this is a pretty early version of Chrome. Well, we're in here. Kind of curious what I get for network speed. Granted, my network isn't very fast. We're downloading a DMG right now at 3.5 megabytes a second, 3.7. I don't think that's quite my full network speed. I should be able to get about 6.25 megabytes a second at max through my network. I have 50 megabit per second internet, so stands to reason I should be able to get about 6 megabytes a second, but it seems to be doing just fine. I'm sure it's 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. I don't really know what else is in here. iTunes might be slightly interesting to look at. Old version of iTunes. Sure, I'll agree. Pretty sure this background is from a much newer version of macOS than we're using here, but we'll not worry about that. Of course, there's no music on this thing, so this doesn't really help me. Okay, so I found what claims to be a free trial of KidPix online, which is Now, totally not a virus, I'm sure. Looks like it's going to open. Now, this is an updater. What the heck is this? Oh, this doesn't do anything. That's useless. Okay, so I've been trying to track down a copy, well, an older copy of this Pix software. And unfortunately on this machine, I keep getting this error. Basically every website I go to eventually times out and tells me that there's this clock error, telling me my clock is ahead. If I click on update to 8 in time, you can see that it's currently 8:10:27 according to the computer. And according to my watch, it is 8:10:34 right now. So if anything, this clock is about 1 or 2 seconds ahead. So I'm not sure why we keep getting that error. And I don't know if that's just something to do with this older web browser or what. We could also try to go to time.gov. Connection is not private. Try it anyway, because this will actually tell you. Yeah, my clock is off by plus 96 milliseconds. So yeah, my clock is not really ahead, at least according to this. But anyway, I'm downloading an older version of Pix from a sketchy website that's probably a virus on a different computer. And we're going to use this flash drive to transfer it over here. But that means I need to reformat this flash drive because it has our macOS 10 installer on it. So let's go ahead and look up disk utility. And we'll see if we can't format it with the new Mac. We'll erase this and we'll make it exFAT. And usually I think I name this thing SP64_GB. It's a 64 gigabyte flash drive from Silicon Power. Go ahead and erase that. It's pretty easy to make the install media, so I'm not too concerned about wiping this drive out. And there we go. Looks like we got what we wanted. We can eject that, and we can move it to our other computer and get the virus off of it. Now, before you go accusing me of downloading pirated software, let me just tell you that the website that I'm downloading it from claims that I'm downloading a free trial and makes no promise of the software actually being usable. So it's going to be an unlicensed copy, which will be like a 15-day free trial, I'm guessing, by the website. So, not really pirating, we're just getting an older version from a sketchy website, and that's okay. Alright, so I've dug out basically the only CD that I have, and you can see this is a burned CD of a man named Sean D. And this kind of has a funny story to it, because back when I was in college, this guy went around with all these burned CDs and just left them on people's windshields. So that's how I ended up with this, and I still have it for some reason. I left his business card in here. I guess if you want to look up this guy, you can see the Snapchat there and his name. I did notice this music really became kind of a joke between my friends and I in college that had also received these CDs. But anyway, let's slide this guy in here and see what's up. But I was going to say that I did notice that his music, or most of his music, is now no longer on Spotify. So I kind of have a rare piece of Sean D history here. Most of these songs don't seem to be available anymore. But anyway, this is of course some guy that nobody's ever heard of. He was actually a student at my college, I believe. But anyway, would you like to import the CD, audio CD, into your iTunes library? No, probably not. It has no idea what any of the tracks are, of course, which is kind of expected. I think out of the songs that are on here, the only one that's really appropriate, that's not going to get me demonetized, is probably track 4, so let's see if we can play that. Drive spinning up. Hey, hey, hey. It's working. I, of course, can't play too much of it anyway because it's going to be copywritten, but that is functioning. So anyhow, I should be able to eject the drive. You have to hold this for a second to eject it. Maybe it just took a second. But yeah, our optical drive seems to work just fine. So that's good news. Just trying to pull up YouTube here to see if it has any chance in working whatsoever. One difference I did notice between this version of macOS and the current version is that the full screen buttons don't really do what you expect them to do, at least if you're used to modern Macs. Modern Mac would take up the entire screen when you press that button, and it would kind of shift it off onto another desktop. So that is different. You have to manually resize your windows if you want to go into full screen. And it looks like YouTube is kind of trying to do something here. I can try like Rave, I guess. Do this the Linus Tech Tips way of speaker testing. It is playing. See if we can go full screen. Oh, it's trying. Yeah, it went. There we go. I have a scroll bar at the bottom for some reason, but it's trying anyway. Apparently it's at 720p. Yeah, I guess the compression's just really bad because of the way the video looks. I'll go ahead and hold my mic up closer to the computer. Okay, anyway, yeah, it can play a YouTube video at 720p, which ain't half bad. Speakers really don't sound too bad on this machine either. They're not super heavy on bass, but they don't sound bad at all. But anyway, let's see if we can't install this free trial of software. This does seem like it's at least attempting to work. It's kind of a weird macOS program because it has an installer instead of just dragging the thing over. But anyway, yeah, 15-day trial. Let's see what we can do using it for home. Yeah, we'll run the full install. As a video, apparently.
Once upon a time, everything in Pix was 2D. And then one day, a magic 3D fairy came along and waved her 3D wand, and suddenly, everything was in 3D. Now everything was wonderfully round, and characters who once stood still could now move along the path. Welcome to the wonderful world of Pix 3D.
Alright, so apparently it is installed. Go ahead and click on Done. We now have the icon. I should be able to get rid of this and eject this as well at this point. And this should fire up. A license agreement, I guess we'll accept that. Ah man, I have to fill this out. This is kind of interesting. It has a selection box for only Intel Macs, only older Macs, or both Intel and older Macs. I guess I have only Intel, though technically my other Mac is Apple Silicon, so does that count or not? Register. Ah, yes, the sound effects.
Sequence start. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kid Pix, come on and play with Kid Pix. Wow. Change it up, draw it up, move it up. There it is, move around, and the sound. Kid Pix, come on and play with Kid Pix. Kid Pix, when is my favorite? Now grab your wacky brush, Kid Pix. Wow.
All right, well, that was something. Yes, all the sound effects, the keyboard and everything. Here we go. I truly have no idea what I should be doing with my lights, to be honest. Doing my best to film the screen, and it's not really doing all that well. But this has all kinds of different sound effects, which honestly is the main reason why I wanted to get in here. But there are two sound effects that I specifically remember. I think they're under... I think it's this, and then you have to go into this guy. Maybe. No, that's not it. There we go. The paint can. That's what I'm looking for. And then, if you go through these things, this one. This is one of the sounds that we used to annoy our teachers with way back in the day. Sounds something like this. Yes, you can paint with rocks in Kid Pix. The other one is this, which is money. Should really hook up like an audio jack to this thing and actually get something out of it instead of trying to just record it with the microphone, but it will work. And there are other tools in this. You can do some pretty weird stuff. Some weird filters and things. And I remember this guy. This is like an undo button, and he makes some noises.
No, no, no.
Yikes!
Whoops. Oops.
Oh no.
No way.
Who don't want it?
Anyway, that's kind of that. And then this thing will power wash everything off of your canvas. Yeah, so even if this is a slightly newer version than what we actually used back when I was in school, it very much feels exactly the same as it did back then. So yeah, anyway, kind of a fun little blast down memory lane, I guess, just for me. And even after playing around with this guy for, I don't know, an hour or so now probably, I have 63% battery left with an hour and 59 minutes remaining, so battery actually seems to be holding up okay, and the screen has been on full brightness the entire time too, which I'm sure doesn't help it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little adventure of bringing this MacBook back to life and kind of going down a little trip on memory lane with me. But anyway, I'll probably do some more things with this MacBook in the future. I want to try to put a newer OS on it and just see how usable as it is as a computer in 2023. So I guess if you want to see that, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you've used a computer like this before, maybe consider leaving a comment. Tell me about your experiences. So anyway, see you next one, guys. Bye.